On February 19, 2019, at the age of 85, the Kaiser of fashion, Karl Lagerfeld, said goodbye forever to the runways of the world, leaving behind a legacy that is hard to match. Star designer of the French fashion house Chanel for more than 30 years, of Italian fashion house Fendi for 54, with more than 2 decades working freelance for the French fashion house Chloe, the saga of the master designer was impressive. What's more, he created his namesake fashion line, was a professional photographer, author of photography books, and leading man of many adventures in art as well as in life.
He could continue the line of Chanel and develop it to make it still classic, but still apply to the world of today and modernize it so that there are all these people following it, and work with Fendi.
I just do what my inner voice is telling me. I'm the Joan of Arc of design.
Lagerfeld, the Kaiser of fashion. The Spring-Summer 2019 Couture fashion show, Lagerfeld's last, was held at the Grand Palais in Paris on January 22, 2019. In a Paris covered in snow for winter, the Grand Palais was a spring oasis transformed into the Mediterranean setting of a beautiful Tuscan village, surrounded by orange trees and rose bushes, a deep blue sky, and a pool that cast the water's reflection. Amid this glorification of spring, the public had the pleasure of admiring 62 exquisite garments, each one handmade. The atmosphere was joyful and festive, up until Lagerfeld wasn't seen coming out for his customary walk to close the show. Virginia Viard, creative studio director of Chanel and his right hand, received the well-deserved applause for every seamstress, artisan, and artist that had made possible this last high fashion show designed by the absent Lagerfeld. The absence of the maestro at the Grand Palais was foreboding of the final outcome. Today, fashion shows have become huge media shows, super productions that combine various artistic forms, at events where trendy personalities and celebrities meet. In this medium, there is no fashion house or designer that tops the lavish and spectacular settings that Lagerfeld conceived for his fashion shows.
Et je vais garder très fort dans mon cœur l'exemple d'un homme qui a su être un directeur artistique extraordinaire. C'est le père de tous les directeurs artistiques.
On October 2007, a spectacular and historic fashion show amazes Asia. Under a beautiful sunset, Fendi and Karl Lagerfeld, the creative director for the brand, presented the Spring-Summer collection for a Chinese market hungry for luxury products. 88 models sporting glamorous garments strutted down the longest catwalk in the world, the ancient and monumental Great Wall of China. 9 years later, and in celebration of the 90th anniversary of the brand, Fendi financed in its entirety the cost of the restoration of the Fontana di Trevi in Rome, where they would stage one of the most breathtaking fashion shows ever. For this occasion, models draped in exquisite handmade dresses adorned with prints, embroideries, and appliques walked across a plexiglass runway stretched across the Trevi fountain, creating the magical illusion of walking on water.
I think the fashion world is lucky that a few labels like Fendi and others do well enough that they can pay for this kind of restoration, because the Fountain of Trevi are a symbol of Rome.
For the presentation of the 2010-2011 Fall-Winter collection, the designer imported from northern Switzerland a 240-ton block of ice. 35 sculptors worked 6 days to transform the massive block into a polar landscape. For the occasion, the Grand Palais was kept at sub-zero temperatures to preserve the iceberg. Karl wanted to raise the awareness about climate change and the melting of the polar ice caps, but instead, what the audience saw were yetis and cavemen, shaggy women and men walking on the catwalk covered in faux fur. Amidst this unusual fashion show, there were some saving graces, such as rings and necklaces inspired by rock crystal quartz and evening gowns with the texture of fresh fallen snow. What is beyond dispute is that only someone as respected as Lagerfeld could present such a fashion show without being crucified. To present his 2014-2015 fall-winter collection, Lagerfeld replicates a high-end supermarket. More than 100,000 products with the Chanel logo are exhibited on supermarket shelves, while models walk through the aisles with shopping carts, bags, and baskets. At the end of the show, Lagerfeld's voice is heard on a speaker inviting the public to take home sweets and vegetables of their choosing. An eager audience accepts the invitation, taking everything in sight, but are stopped at the exit door and asked to return the precious merchandise.
I think the pleasure of shopping is a cultural activity of our days.
A spaceship in the middle of the Grand Palais was the background chosen by Lagerfeld for his fall-winter 2017-2018 Chanel collection. With special effects and to the music of Rocket Man from the British composer Elton John, the spaceship appears to take off towards the iconic ironwork and glass ceiling of the Grand Palais. Pharrell Williams, musician, friend of the house, and Lagerfeld's model for Chanel, declared to the press that in every show, Karl transports his public to another world, another dimension, but this time, he had done it literally. He praised the production ability of the maestro when he said, "Karl thinks, designs, and delivers."
I remember there was a French designer, she went out of business saying, only clever women wear my dresses. Apparently there were not enough clever women to keep her in business. Huh? You shouldn't say something like this, it's very pretentious.
While his high school classmates listened to their teachers, Karl Lagerfeld sketched and studied French, fascinated by the lifestyle of Parisian artists and determined to live in the City of Light. Born in Hamburg, Germany on September 10, 1933, Karl grew up in a wealthy home. His father made his fortune importing condensed milk, and with the arrival of World War II, he moved the family to a rural area to shield them from the horrors of war. From a very young age, he was enticed by fashion. On his 4th birthday, he asked his mother for an unusual birthday present, a valet, a gentleman's male servant to attend to his clothing and his personal needs, and years later, in elementary school, he criticized, without mercy, the way some of his classmates dressed. With his parents' blessing and financial aid, he fulfills his dream of moving to Paris at age 16. He begins studying history and drawing at the prestigious Lycée Montaigne. Soon, he drops out of school and becomes a regular at the fashion circles, carrying his sketches with him. In 1954, Coco Chanel returns to the fashion world after a long hiatus following World War II. In that same year, Karl Lagerfeld wins first prize for his coat design in the French International Wool Secretariat. He is only 21 years old. Yves Saint Laurent, 3 years younger than Lagerfeld, wins first prize for best suit design in the same contest. This will start a rivalry between the two young designers and friends, Lagerfeld of German descent and Saint Laurent of French parents but born in Algeria. Both unaware that the passage of time would bring them fame as icons of the fashion world. In 1957, at Dior's death, Saint Laurent gets an outstanding proposition, an offer to head the House of Dior. When Lagerfeld finds out, he announces that he detests high fashion and devotes himself to developing a line of pret-a-porter, or ready-to-wear clothing. However, high fashion beckons him, and he gets a job working freelance for various designers, such as Tiziano, Jean Patou, and Pierre Balmain. With Balmain, he becomes junior assistant. In 1964, he joins the French brand Chloe, and for more than 2 decades creates loose and flowing designs in bold prints, fun to wear. Brigitte Bardot, Grace Kelly, and Jackie Kennedy are some of the followers of this Karlian period, infused with the bohemian style of the brand. His stint in Chloe earns Karl international recognition as a serious fashion name and gave him the courage to launch his own brand, Karl Lagerfeld, in 1984. In 1965, Karl Lagerfeld begins to work for the Italian name Fendi, where he would stay until his death. He says that Fendi represents his Roman side. Lagerfeld's innovative designs of exotic inspiration, such as medieval armors, kimonos, or the outfit of the Eskimos, proved groundbreaking for Fendi, positioning the Italian line in the international market. Silvia Venturini Fendi, partner and designer for Lagerfeld at the company, remembers how, when she was 4 years old, her Aunt Carla would pull out Karl's crumpled sketches from the wastebasket to iron them out for safekeeping. She recalls young Lagerfeld getting very upset about it, for Aunt Carla's determination to preserve the designs challenged his compulsion to forget the past and focus only on the present. The Kaiser thought highly of garbage cans, saying that it was the most important piece of furniture in a house. He threw out almost everything, his own archives, sketches, photographs, clothes, declaring that he was meant to do and not to remember. His breakthrough arrives in 1983, when the fashion house Chanel, fading in importance since Coco's death, appoints him artistic director. This marks the beginning of the most successful professional period of his life. The young daughters of the faithful Chanel clients breathe a sigh of relief when, on his arrival, Karl introduces a modern style to the line by using appliqué and sequins while retaining the elegance and legacy of its creator. Coco was an innovative woman successful in a world led by men. If Saint Laurent creates the tuxedo for women, it is Coco who begins to design pants for ladies, as well as her famous 2-piece suit consisting of jacket and skirt. One day, she decided to shorten her skirt in order to walk faster, so it's not surprising that fate would bring the resourceful designer to Lagerfeld to continue her legacy. Both loved black, both had a unique style and successful career, and both were lone wolves who never left the fashion world and went on creating until their death.
In the end, she hated blue jeans, she hated miniskirt, so that gave her a little untrendy image. When I took over, everyone said, don't touch it. So I thought it was an interesting challenge, but I never expected it to become that great and that famous again.
At Chanel, Lagerfeld oversees all aspects of the business, from the design to the image that the brand projects internationally. He transforms the fashion shows, redefines the stores, even takes care of the press. From the outset of Lagerfeld's career at Chanel, Inès de la Fressange was the muse and face of the fashion house. In 1983, she became the first model to sign an exclusive modeling contract with a fashion house. Inès had a singular modeling style. She waved and smiled unpretentiously and would take pictures back at the paparazzi after the fashion show. In 1989, she lends her likeness to France and represents Marianne, the symbol of the French Republic. Karl, upset, condemned her decision, saying that he would not dress up historic monuments. Shortly after, the model and Chanel parted ways. 2 decades later, Inès de la Fressange takes to the runway at Chanel's Spring-Summer 2011 show, ending the 20-year feud between the designer and the model. Claudia Schiffer, one of the most important models in Karl Lagerfeld's life. After Inès de la Fressange's separation from Chanel, Lagerfeld reinvents himself and hires Claudia Schiffer, a German model that was beginning to make her way in the world of fashion. Up until Claudia's arrival in 1990, there were no blonde models in Chanel's fashion shows. They were usually brunettes and devoid of curves. With this beautiful and curvaceous, wholesome blonde that resembled Brigitte Bardot, Chanel takes the fashion world by surprise. She was an instant success, and Claudia, who was very young, was overwhelmed by her sudden fame. At the time, Karl declared that Claudia's arrival to the fashion scene was like a beautiful sunrise, still illuminating the sky. From the early 70s through the late 80s, unbridled sex and drugs were the most popular trends in the fashion world of Paris. As Saint Laurent indulged in excesses, Karl Lagerfeld remained self-disciplined and sober. And while the Frenchman turned over his life to his lover and companion, Pierre Berger, the German designer remained in control of his destiny all through his life. The Kaiser of fashion met socialite Jacques Debaucher in the early part of 1970 and was struck by his beauty. He was Karl's great love. In those days, pleasure-seeking and sexual liberation ran rampant through Paris, and Karl was not the only one to surrender to Jacques' charm. Saint Laurent was smitten too. Yves Saint Laurent had a passionate affair with Debaucher that started a fierce battle between the two designers. Common friends were forced to choose bands, and the rivalry led to an open war through the press. Lagerfeld insisted that his relationship with Jacques was never physical, but financed many of Debaucher's excesses, finding them simply entertaining. The affair between Saint Laurent and Jacques Debaucher came to an end when Pierre Berger, partner, friend, and companion of Saint Laurent, had a decisive conversation with the aristocratic Jacques, thus effectively ending his relationship with Yves Saint Laurent. As the ghost of AIDS looms large, the days of indulgence fades away. When Jacques Debaucher, his friend and companion, falls prey to the new virus, Lagerfeld finds himself facing this unknown and threatening disease. On September 1989, Jacques dies from AIDS. Karl nurses him until the end. In those last days, he sleeps in the hospital room watching how the love of his life wastes away. After this loss, Karl will remain unattached for the rest of his life. Jacques' untimely death at 38 years old marks the end of a long, intense summer in the life of the designer, but life goes on, and Karl continues to work tirelessly, designing and creating. Most designers are known for a signature design, not Lagerfeld. What sets him apart is his distinctive appearance and unique style. This groundbreaking creator and prolific designer produced more than 13 fashion shows per year, and he is hard to typecast. Extremely versatile and original, he blended classic and extravagant in many of his designs. His creative strength consisted of using the basic, classic style of the brand he was working for at the time and redefining it into something trendy. He was a chameleon who changed his colors according to the house for which he was designing. With his characteristic impishness, Lagerfeld once said that depending on the occasion, I'm Miss Chanel, Miss Fendi, Miss Chloe, or even Miss Lagerfeld.
Il a été le premier à accepter des collaborations avec le fast fashion, le premier à aller sur le digital, le premier à comprendre que le seul véhicule de l'histoire pour transporter l'histoire, c'était le futur et c'était le chemin de le futur.
And the good thing is that fashion has the big opportunity that it can go from the old world to the new world, what is not the case of a lot of other things.
If Lagerfeld was extravagant in color and accessories for other fashion houses, when he designed for his own brand, it was a different story. On the fall-winter 2006 runway for his eponymous brand, Lagerfeld recreates the gray skies and bleak landscapes of the rural Germany of his childhood. Emaciated youths model ragged clothes in black, brown, and gray hues, mirroring a dark and tragic world that the designer feels free to express in his own brand. To the public, the iconic image of Karl Lagerfeld will invariably be tight ponytail, black pants, white shirt with stiff collars, slim black jacket down to his knees, gloves, rings in his fingers, and his mythic black sunglasses. But Lagerfeld's personal style has evolved through the decades. On his first day at Fendi, the designer wore a Norfolk jacket and a sort of Scottish tweed, French-style culottes, a lavalier tie printed in yellow and red tones, boots, and a bag he found in Milan. Both looks pure Lagerfeld style. The Kaiser wasn't always the slim figure and tight pants of his later years. After his friend and companion, Jacques Deboucher, passed away in 1989, Karl donned his iconic dark glasses indefinitely and began to gain weight. 11 years later, after a Dior fashion show, Karl was possessed by the desire to wear very slim pants designed by Eddie Slimane. This prompted his decision to go on a strict diet, losing 90 pounds in 13 months. The Lagerfeld diet was made popular by the book of the same name. As a dieter, Lagerfeld saw himself as a general with a single soldier in his army. Aside from his iron willpower, Karl credited his success to being a real bore who never smoked, drank alcohol, or took drugs. Karl Lagerfeld's designs were born before dawn. His inspiration flowed while he slept. At such moments, he would turn towards his nightstand, still half asleep, grab a white index card, and jot down the idea. The next day, well awake and without hurry, he would draw the sketch. At the Rue Cambon, Chanel's headquarters, work starts as soon as the head seamstress, in one of the 4 ateliers of the brand, receives the designer's final sketch. 2 workshops specialize in what is known as the flau, light and ethereal garments in fabrics such as chiffon, tulle, and silk. 2 other shops work with heavier fabrics, such as wool, leather, and tweed. And 1 small atelier takes care of trimmings and embellishments. Each workshop makes and supervises approximately 70 garments for each fashion show. The head seamstress of the atelier has 3 assistants, as well as 3 interns being trained on the brand's work method. By doing this, Chanel guarantees the continuity of its methods and techniques. The design is then assigned to one of the many seamstresses in the atelier, who will be in charge of the project from start to finish. Once she receives the sketch, she first brings it to life as a prototype in toile, a tri-dimensional model in calico cotton, to ensure the correct volume and proportions for the garment. It should mirror the exact sketch of the designer, and it's the basis for the pattern. Each atelier works closely with the master artisans who will execute all the embellishments and accessories. Then, Lagerfeld studied the prototype on a live model, and with Virginia Viard, his major collaborator, by his side, he selected the fabric and made the necessary changes. Few creative directors and designers choose the details, such as buttons or lining color for a garment. It is usually a task left to assistants and seamstresses. Not Lagerfeld, who got involved in every step of the creation. The designer's sketch is carried in the seamstress's precise hands, what the French call petite main, or little hand. From the basic calico prototype to the artful final garment, creations that can take between 500 and 1,000 hours per garment to produce. Careful attention is paid to every detail, such as hiding the seams under beautiful embroideries. On the day before the collection goes public, the team ensembles the garments, hats, shoes, bags, and accessories to put the final touches on the creations. During the fashion shows, all those responsible for the collection wait behind the scenes, holding their breath until the moment when the audience breaks into applause and cheers for the beautiful garments that not so long ago were only sketches. Among this backstage team, a woman stands out. Amanda Harlick, a British baroness, kept a permanent room at the Hotel Ritz Paris during the Chanel fashion show season. She worked side by side with the maestro, helping him give the final touches to the collection.
Never really get to the end, because the minute you've designed that suit, actually realize its imperfections, because fashion is all about change, and actually nothing stays the same. So the moment something's actually made, it's almost not fashionable anymore, which is an awful thought.
Amanda does not like the word muse. She deems it too old-fashioned. She would rather think of her role as a sounding board for the Kaiser to bounce off ideas. She also went along with all his cinematographic adventures. For the limelight moments, Lagerfeld had a good friend and ambassador. Caroline of Monaco, fashion queen and muse for the designer, wears mostly Chanel. From the gowns and garments exhibited at royal events that she precedes, and the opulent wedding dresses to her day wear, the princess trusts her wardrobe to her good luck charm designer and the fashion house he stands for. The two-colored shoes, the classic tweed suits, the white tailored shirts, all characteristic Chanel pieces and classic Caroline wardrobe. Her eldest daughter, Carlotta Casiraghi, is following her mother's footsteps in her passion for wearing, almost exclusively, designs from this renowned Parisian house. One of Lagerfeld's best ideas was to present a collection dedicated to the tradition of French artisanship in fashion, celebrating the exquisite craftsmanship of the artists and artisans that worked tirelessly on the accessories for Chanel's collections. As of 2002, Chanel travels the world with this fashion show, paying homage to these masters of art. For the Kaiser of fashion, it was a privilege to be able to create with the best in the business and in the best possible condition. He considered it a luxury. Karl's last Métiers d'Art collection, 2018-2019, travels to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. The setting was the 15 BC Egyptian temple of Dender. The models strut onto the catwalk dripping in gold and featuring Egyptian-inspired accessories, headdresses, and eye makeup. The Egyptian theme is carried out in the color palette with corals and scarab blues, as well as in wraparound skirts from the hieroglyphs of that great civilization. Under the eye of Horus, Lagerfeld creates a collection where ancient Egypt and young urban New York combine successfully. A year before, in 2017, the maestro presents the Métiers d'Art collection in his birthplace, Hamburg. Lagerfeld is emphatic about not choosing the city because of nostalgia for his hometown, but admits he feels at home in Hamburg. As someone who appreciates design and architecture, he chooses Hamburg for its modern concert hall, the Elbphilharmonie, built on Hamburg's dockside on top of a warehouse that was bombarded in World War II. Lagerfeld, inspired by his surroundings, recreates the working wardrobe of the sailors, puts his twist on it, and comes up with something new and modern. The runway show closes with models Anna Ewers and Kaya Gerber wearing short, striped sailor dresses. Every stripe made entirely of feathers, every feather dyed and stitched by hand. One more example of the excellence of artisanship in French fashion. During the last decades, Karl Lagerfeld turned to it girls when choosing a face for Chanel. Trend-setting, attractive young women with a particular style and a rebellious, daring spirit. Cara Delevingne, British model, singer, and actress, has modeled for multiple brands. She and Karl got very close after 2012. That year, at Fashion Week in Paris, Karl commented that Cara was different, had a strange beauty, and was full of life and pep. From then on, she opened and closed many Chanel fashion shows and joined him in other ventures, as an actress in Reincarnation, a short film about Coco Chanel, and in the film for the Métier d'Art collection in Salzburg. Kristen Stewart, actress and ambassador for Chanel since 2013. Her rebel looks and her short hair became part of Chanel's fashion strategy, which is to say, of Karl Lagerfeld's. She was the face in ad campaigns for various collections, as well as the eye makeup campaign 2016-2017 and the Le Rouge and One ad. Kristen worked with Geraldine Chaplin in the short film Once and Forever, written and directed by Karl, where she played a demanding and disagreeable actress in the role of Coco Chanel at the early stages of her career as a designer. Karl was an inquisitive person, which led him to explore many cultural mediums. Music was one of them. He was fascinated by hip-hop, the musical style created by Afro-American youngsters as their way of making a cultural statement through their street music and fashion. In 1991, Chanel presents a collection made of oversized denim, patchwork, and gold chains that hang on necks and from miniskirts. This homage sparks a response from the young rappers of America, who in turn start sporting the renowned Chanel combat boots paired with their usual loose Bermudas and baseball caps. The boots were not only swanky, but gave them the added bonus of better dance moves. Decades after, Lagerfeld continues to include musicians from the hip-hop movement in his work. Singer Pharrell Williams became the star of an ad campaign for Chanel's new Gabrielle bag. And singers Nicki Minaj, Kanye West, and Rihanna were part of many Lagerfeld projects. The love is reciprocated, and the Lagerfeld name is casually dropped in more than 9 rap songs. In 2004, Karl Lagerfeld surprises the fashion world when he decides to link his name to the H&M brand, a Swedish retailer that specializes in fast fashion. Together they launch a collection of jackets at 129 euros and t-shirts with a print of his face for only 19 euros. Prices unheard of in the Kaiser's world. The inventory sells out immediately, and H&M refuses to increase production, stating their intentions to keep the line as exclusive. This action obstructs the designer's initial goal of making his brand available to a wider public. Upset, Lagerfeld pulls out of the partnership. On December 2011, Choupette, Lagerfeld's second great love, came into his life. With a French name that means darling, the 4-month-old kitten arrived at his house in the arms of model and friend Baptiste Giabicone for a temporary visit, but Karl fell in love with her and Choupette stayed. She lives like a queen, attended by 2 maids, one for the day and one for the evening. She eats at the table, travels with Karl on his private plane, and has more than 100,000 Instagram followers. She has earned 3 million euros from 2 commercials, one for the German car company Opel, and the other for a Japanese beauty line with her name, Choupette, designed for young girls that love that kitty. At the Chanel fashion show, Spring-Summer 2011, a boy walks down the runway holding the hand of a male model. An unusual decision by Karl Lagerfeld that delights the audience. The boy is Hudson Kronig, who walks with his father, model Brad Kronig. From that moment on, Hudson walks with his godfather and benefactor, Karl Lagerfeld, at the close of his fashion shows. Karl considered Brad, his wife Nicole, and his children family.
He's the best designer in the world, and he's my godfather.
Sébastien Jondu worked for Lagerfeld for more than 2 decades as his bodyguard, private secretary, and personal assistant. They met at an 18th century antique shop where Lagerfeld was a regular. Sébastien asked him if he needed a bodyguard, and later, Karl hired him. By 2005, He was already modeling for Lagerfeld brand, and in 2018, he launched his first collection, Karl Lagerfeld, curated by Sébastien Jondu. He was with Lagerfeld on his last hours and is one of the executors of his last will and testament. On July 4th, 2019, with the Colosseum as backdrop, Fendi pays homage to Karl Lagerfeld. The tribute takes place during the high fashion show Fall-Winter 2019. Fendi presents a collection of 54 couture looks, one for each year the late designer worked at the fashion house. It was a collection full of lightness and colorful geometric prints, inspired by Rome's ancient mosaics, marble, and rich mineral colors. A celebration of the association between the innovative designer and the revolutionary fur brand, the longest work relationship in the history of fashion. On July 20th, 2019, the Grand Palais is decked out once more for Lagerfeld. This time for his memorial, a celebration called Karl Forever. The fashion houses Chanel and Fendi come together to honor their star designer. More than 2,500 personalities from the world of fashion, politics, and royalty arrive in black formal attire, not for mourning, but because it was his favorite color. The walls of the Palais were covered in enlarged black and white portraits of Lagerfeld, photographs taken at different stages of his life, his youth, his time in Chloe, Fendi, Chanel, his own brand, and as one of the most relevant personalities of the fashion world. The event featured performances, readings, music, videos, and when it was time to go home, everybody knew that Karl would live forever. Karl dedicates his last 4 pret-a-porter or ready-to-wear fashion shows to nature and only to her. To present the Spring-Summer 2018 collection, Karl, in a demonstration of creativity, transforms the Grand Palais of Paris into a natural forest, complete with mossy rocks and exuberant waterfalls. On this occasion, the models emerge from caves, wearing raincoats and rain bonnets to protect their tresses. They don't strut among the audience. They walk across a bridge with a magnificent waterfall as backdrop. As the show closes, Lagerfeld casually comments on the good feeling created by the molecules from the water and the ozone in the air, declaring that waterfalls are the healthiest thing in the world. Meanwhile, the audience just feels high in such a magnificent setting. Once again, the Grand Palais is the venue to present a Chanel collection, and on this occasion, Fall-Autumn 2018, Lagerfeld turns the Palais into an enchanted autumn forest. 9 tall trees are installed inside, shocking environmentalists and captivating the audience. The line of models tread deliberately through the runway covered in yellow leaves that crunch under their feet. Lagerfeld professes his love for autumn and declares it his favorite season. Even though he says his inspiration comes from no particular forest, he mentions he grew up in the country and remembers similar trees flanking the walkway to his home. Karl, who has always wanted to leave his past behind, recreates, in this collection, the landscape of his childhood, a place where he grew up sheltered by his parents from the horrors of World War II. For his last Spring-Summer 2019 collection, Lagerfeld recreates a tropical beach inside the Grand Palais of Paris, complete with blue sky, an ocean with gentle waves, on-duty lifeguards, and lots of sand. The fashion show opens with the models strolling through the waves, shoes in hand. For all the casualness of the set, it was a collection that brought back the Parisian chic in dresses and coats of elegant simplicity. On February 21st, 2019, Fendi presents the Fall-Winter 2019 collection at Milan's Fashion Week. It is Lagerfeld's last collection for the brand and comes out 2 days after his death. A few days before, Sylvia and Karl had spoken on the phone. They had talked about the richness and beauty of their new Fendi collection. Nothing intimate or personal, nothing final, not a hint of goodbye, in true Lagerfeld style. As the fashion show opens, the atmosphere is somber. Fran Summers, the model, walks out dressed in a likeness of what Lagerfeld would have chosen to wear had he been a woman. A tailored suit with double-breasted jacket and a giant white bow at the throat. To pay homage to the maestro, there were many ponytails that day, as well as starched white collars and frock coats, all in remembrance of the great designer that had, with Fendi, a bond of more than 5 decades. The show ends with a video called 54 Years Together, as he was when he arrived for his first day of work at Fendi. Both Chanel and Fendi chose the song Heroes by David Bowie for their farewell to Lagerfeld fashion shows. On February 19th, 2019, in the middle of winter, Lagerfeld leaves the runways. 2 weeks later, Chanel presents his last collection, the Fall-Winter 2019. Paris pays tribute to the immense talent of Karl Lagerfeld, presenting the collection as an only fashion show during Fashion Week. It was a success applauded by all, but one he would not savor. To showcase the collection, the Grand Palais was transformed into a winter wonderland, with snow-topped chalets and trees, set against the backdrop of mountain peaks. In honor of his rejection of vulgar sentimentality, the only reference to his death was a minute of silence. At the close of the show, models and audience joined in a standing ovation, with tears and tributes aplenty. Penelope Cruz, dazzling in white, walked down her first ever runway, followed by models such as Adut Akech and Kaya Gerber, also dressed in white with feathers looking like shiny snowflakes. Penelope held a white rose and smiled warmly from the runway, a last goodbye to the great designer. Imposing waterfalls that blow cool breezes, autumn forests, fallen trees, and leaves that crunch under feet, intense blue skies and tropical beaches with rolling waves are all natural elements that frame his last ready-to-wear collection. On his last fashion show, the Autumn-Winter Collection 2019, when Lagerfeld has already left the mise-en-scène, nature sleeps in the white and pristine surroundings of the dead of winter, ready to renew itself. Karl Lagerfeld left silently in February 2019, leaving an indelible imprint on the world of fashion. Following Lagerfeld's death, Virginia Viard took over as creative director of Chanel and Silvia Venturini Fendi as creative director of Fendi.